In the late 70s, punk music emerges as a counter to the more flashy and synthy sounds of the disco era. Leading the charge is the British band the Sex Pistols and their self-destructive bass player.
People are always captivated by dark figures. We're always obsessed with a human's downfall. Even the name is romanticized forever.
The name is Sid Vicious, a star-crossed soul whose life sadly mirrors his title, and whose death remains shrouded with intrigue. Sid Vicious is actually born John Simon Ritchie in southeast London, a quiet child raised by a troubled single mother.
People that knew him said he was actually a fairly shy, sort of like introverted character, but he had a mother that was very outspoken and very loud. She grew up sort of an ex-hippie, free spirit type and an addict, and if anybody was a crazy one in Sid's family, it was his mom.
So you have Sid Vicious, this sort of tragic figure. His personality wasn't strong enough to stand up for himself.
So Sid saw in punk a way to break out of his shell.
Sid breaks out with the punk band the Sex Pistols. When he joins the group in 1977, they hit the scene and blow up. To the shock of an older generation, these London kids define the emerging punk genre as dirty, crass, and in-your-face rock and roll.
The Sex Pistols hit the scene like an atom bomb. I mean, whether you loved it or hated it, it made an impression. It was a return to rock and roll.
They were talented, not only playing punk music, but being completely outrageous with their political statements, their lyrical stance, and their frontman, Johnny Rotten, and his sidekick, Sid Vicious.
Sid wasn't in the band for that long. He could, you know, by all reports, barely play, but he kind of embodied, looks-wise and attitude-wise, what people think the Sex Pistols were back then. Anarchy, this live fast, die young, like a poster person for punk rock. He's arguably the most famous member of the Sex Pistols.
The naturally shy Vicious finds coping with his newfound fame difficult, and in order to deal with the pressure, turns to drugs, following in his addicted mother's footsteps. At the same time, another influential woman enters his sphere, a college dropout named Nancy Spungen.
The Sid and Nancy story is punk rock Romeo and Juliet.
I think they generally felt love for each other, but it was a crazy, strange love that was not good for either one of them.
She liked to fight, she liked to mix it up. So you've got her as a combustion agent in an already combustive band, and then you add heroin to the equation. He didn't have a shot.
Sid and Nancy became famous in the sort of gossip tabloids because of antics with getting arrested and problems with drugs. And that was the end of the Sex Pistols.
Already a bizarre mixture of unhinged personalities, the band is virtually doomed by the volatile pairing of Sid and Nancy. Soon after the power couple hook up, the Sex Pistols break up. Sid and Nancy retreat into a drug-riddled lifestyle while living out of New York's Chelsea Hotel. After a party on October 12, 1978, Sid wakes up to a horrifying scene.
He woke up the next morning and went into the bathroom and found blood everywhere. His knife that he had kept hung up on a wall was in the bathroom as well. And Nancy dead.
But who is responsible for Nancy's death?
We'll never know exactly what happened. You could make a case that she did it herself. You could make a case that it was a drug deal that went awry. You can make a case that it was a crime of passion. I believe that Sid might have not remembered doing it.
I don't believe that Sid killed Nancy. Sid had taken a handful of Tuanols, downers, essentially, and most people agree that Sid was just out of it that night. He was passed out. You know, I think there's shady characters coming in and out of the room that night, and Nancy woke up or found somebody trying to steal stuff from them, and violence ensued.
Nancy's death begins a downward spiral for the punk icon. He's now a suspected murderer and will soon become a victim himself.
After Nancy died, he was the suspect. Sid got arrested. And there's always been talk of a suicide pact they had.
Stunningly, he is allowed to post bail. But on the outside, a dangerously dismantled Sid soon explodes. He's arrested for assault and sent to Rikers Island.
Imagine withdrawing from heroin at Rikers Island. It sounds like a hell that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. That sounds just absolutely nightmarish.
But is there something more brewing? Is Sid trying to sabotage his own life? Is he trying to honor a suicide pact to his fallen girlfriend? Rumors abound that Sid tries to kill himself. In a TV interview, he offers this glimpse into his fragile psyche.
Where would you like to be?
Under the ground.
Regardless of his condition, and after 2 months of sobriety, Sid is released from prison. As a welcome home present, his mother, the addict, throws him a party.
When he got out, Sid was asking his mom for some money to buy heroin. Sid's mom was an addict herself, but I think she loved her son in her own way.
Now, you put him in a situation where he's with his mom or other drug addicts, and they're supposed to be babysitting him. I mean, it's just a terrible situation.
What happens at the party has been the subject of speculation for over 40 years.
The story I always heard, he was at a party, his mom gave him the drugs that he shot up with and died. There's a theory she knew what she was doing when she gave him the drugs. Maybe she thought she was doing the right thing.
Was it a mercy killing? You know, did she do it on purpose because her 21-year-old son wasn't going to be able to handle prison? Was it a suicide pact? This is one of the things we're never going to have a clear answer to because he's gone and she's gone.
Over the next several years, Sid's mother, Ann Beverly, tells conflicting stories, once admitting to giving her son the heroin that killed him, other times denying it and claiming she found a note in her son's pocket revealing the suicide pact with Nancy. Reading, "We had a death pact, and I had to keep my half of the bargain." In 1996, Ann Beverly, too, dies of a drug overdose, taking the real answer to her grave.
We'll never know exactly what happened. I just think it's fascinating that for Sid Vicious, whose time in the pop culture spotlight was really, really brief, that we're still talking about him more than 40 years later.
Sid's never convicted of Nancy's murder, and to this day, the mystery over Sid's own passing lingers. Did he OD, honor a suicide pact, or was Sid Vicious murdered by his own mother?
Music's greatest mysteries, all new Sunday at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, only on AXS TV.